Today we're going to look at U.S. imperialism. This is our expansion beyond the U.S. borders, beyond the continental United States. Much of this is going on at the same time as what we talked about in Chapter 5 is happening, the rapid industrialization of the United States. But much of this begins post-Civil War, same as in industrialization, and it all really goes together. The reasons for imperialism or expansion are the same as what we have seen in the past, or at least the real motivator is the same as we've seen in the past, and that's economics. Economics is always a big motivator, and we see this with the creation of the American colonies. We also see this with our movement west. And that's the idea that we need new markets. We need people to sell our goods to. And think about what we talked about in Chapter 5. Think about how quickly our industrialization grew. It was expansive. Mass production techniques, all of the immigrants here, we're just going to be able to produce at a huge level. And who are we going to sell it to? Well, Americans to a degree, but again, think about the abject poverty that existed in America. So yes, people are going to buy the products, but we need to expand. In addition to that, we talked about one economic depression in 1873, but in reality there were several economic depressions caused by this rapid industrialization. And so with that in mind, it's important to realize that those manufacturers, those big businessmen, and even our government want to expand to create some markets for us, and at the same time kind of give us some access to additional natural resources. National security is also a motivator. We are shipping our goods around the world, and we have to have the ability to protect those shipping lanes. And to do that, we have to have a Navy, and though we have a Navy, we really need to have a more modern Navy. And that's one of the things that Admiral Alfred T. Mahan calls for in his book, The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. And it's not just a modern Navy, modern being, ships made of steel as opposed to wood. But we need refueling stations. We need places for our ships to pick up coal. That's what powers these ships at this time. Primarily, we're going to look at islands in the Pacific. Hawaii is a great example of one. So we need refueling stations, but we also need a quicker way to get from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And for that, he's going to call for us to build a canal across the Isthmus of Panama. So really what you're looking at with Mahan's book is, in terms of importance, it's going to lay a foundation for much of what we're going to do, much of the policy that we're going to pull for during this time period, that our government's going to really try to ensure we have. Nationalism is also a familiar just a familiar reason. We talked about with the movement west how it fed into this spirit of pride in our country, but you're looking at just kind of expanding that again, that if we want to keep up our spirit and we want to keep the country strong, and we need to expand, our desires for strength and for territory do not end when we reach the Pacific. They don't. A lot of the same motivating factors still exist. So now we've reached the Pacific Ocean. So now we just need to go further. So again, expansion is going to be essential for us maintaining our spirit and keeping us strong. And there's just no other way to put that. We've conquered the West. What's next? There's also this idea that we have a responsibility toward the world. you can look at this in many different ways. We looked at what social Darwinism is from a business perspective. The social Darwinism we look at in Chapter 6 takes on a more, I guess the word would be racist connotation. We have a responsibility to civilize and democratize the rest of the world. We are the shining light, and it's our duty to help the world. And does the world want to look like us? Sure, and that would play into the whole nationalist belief. But there are poor countries, and why shouldn't we help them? Also, again, the whole idea of survival of the fittest here plays in. However, instead of in a business sense, this is that racial sense, that white America is the most fit, and that we should control or at least help the less fit or the inferior people. And in this case, we are looking mostly at Pacific Islands, or even looking at Latin America. Great example of social Darwinism writing is written by Rudyard Kipling. He wrote White Man's Burden, and that in of itself tells you just kind of how it's looked at. But these are reasons for expansion, okay? So economics, national security, nationalism, and social Darwinism. Now, listen, a lot of people are all for expansion, for imperialism. They're gung-ho, ready to go. Again, we're America, we're the United States. But not everybody supports expansion. Others continue to be isolationists. Now, we can look at this as a this has been our foreign policy since George Washington left office, since his farewell address when he left office. And a lot of people still buy into that. They did not think it was in our best interest to gain territory and to control these foreign territories. There's a lot of danger to that. What if they're going to pull us into foreign conflicts? We have so many problems going on at home also. We do have this domestic uncertainty, these economic depressions, those panics we had talked about. We have these riots, the Haymarket riot. We have these strikes. We have so much going on here. Can we really afford, politically or economically, to look away from that? Can we afford to split our time with that? And let's be honest. Does this really fit into the principles of the Declaration of Independence, or even some of or a lot of the Constitution, all of the Constitution? And when you look and see how we gain these territories, you see that the United States, at least in terms of how it views other people and conquered nations, is very undemocratic. We are going to acquire 2 territories up to about 1898. One is Alaska. This is going to happen 2 years after the Civil War ends. Lincoln's former Secretary of State, William Seward, is going to purchase this from Russia, Alaska from Russia, for $7 million. Why Alaska? We know today that it is very rich in oil, timber, fish. But in 1867, it is seen as a giant wasteland. What's there? Nothing. It really is seen as important because of its proximity to Southeast Asia and China. And it is also kind of, important to buy it from Russia because, That's another country right close to our borders. So kind of getting Russia out of the way, and putting us a little closer to the Southeast Asia and Pacific markets. Now, this was not a popular move. It was called Seward's Folly, Seward's Icebox. He was mocked for buying this. What good is this? And like I said, once oil becomes big and we determine that they have oil, not just oil, but a lot of oil. There's still so much oil that hasn't been tapped up there. It's an extremely wealthy piece of territory, and one that we have just tapped the surface of that today. Hawaii is another one that we're going to acquire that in 1898, and acquiring that makes it sound very much less than what it was. Hawaii is going to be important to us because of national security. Think about that. This is Pearl Harbor, which is an extremely awesome harbor. It's a safe harbor, and this is going to be later become the headquarters of our Pacific Fleet. Also economically, we have had American businessmen investing in Hawaiian sugar plantations, and really over the years they had gained a good bit of political or economic control, and they're going to struggle for political control. And it's going to come to a head. The Queen, she had taken over when her brother died, and during her brother's reign, a native-born Hawaiians had lost a lot of their power. They had lost the ability to vote, and to really have any political power. And so Queen Liliuokalani is going to become queen, and she is going to attempt to reinstate that. The plantation owners, though, feel threatened, and so they are going to work. The United States never really invades Hawaii. They never invade Hawaii, but they're going to use the troops that are nearby as a threat. And so the plantation owners are going to stage a coup. They are going to depose the queen, and they're going to turn to the United States, in a sense, much like Texas did. And they're going to ask to be annexed. Initially, it wasn't popular, at least with the president, but it's not going to take long. So in 1898, they're going to be annexed and made a U.S. territory. All right, so tomorrow we will look at the Spanish-American War. Make sure if you have any questions about 6.1 that you ask me, let me know, and I will be glad to help you in any way I can.